Alexander the Great. The name alone brings to mind a legacy of conquest, bravery, and innovation. We see him in movies, read about him in books, and his name is synonymous with power and glory. But today, let's look beyond the heroics and examine the shadow Alexander cast across ancient history, a side of him that history rarely highlights. We know Alexander as the king of Macedonia, a strategic genius who, by the age of 30, had conquered most of the known world, stretching from Greece to Egypt and even into India. But what's often left out is the havoc and devastation he left in his wake. As Alexander pushed forward, he obliterated cities, decimated populations, and imposed his will, often with brutal consequences. For example, the sacking of Thebes, a Greek city that dared to rebel. Alexander didn't just quell the uprising. He annihilated the entire city, killing thousands and selling survivors into slavery, making an unforgettable statement of terror. Another lesser-known episode is the burning of Persepolis. Persepolis wasn't just any city. It was the heart of the Persian Empire, rich with art, literature, and culture. Alexander's troops, reportedly on his orders, set the city ablaze, erasing centuries of history in a single night. Some sources say he did it in revenge for the Persian invasions of Greece generations earlier. Others suggest it was a drunken impulse. Whatever the reason, this act wiped out a cultural treasure in a devastating show of dominance. It's a stark reminder that Alexander's legacy wasn't only about building, it was also about destruction. And there's his paranoia, often glossed over in accounts of his greatness. As he continued his conquests, Alexander became increasingly suspicious of those closest to him. Think about his relationship with his friend and General Cletus, who had saved Alexander's life in battle. But in a fit of drunken rage, Alexander killed Cletus over a disagreement, unable to tolerate even the slightest dissent. This wasn't a one-off incident. Several of his most trusted officers and advisors met similar fates as Alexander's ego and paranoia grew. He became someone who could turn on his friends at the drop of a hat, valuing loyalty only as long as it didn't challenge his supremacy. And while Alexander is often celebrated for spreading Greek culture, let's be honest about what that really meant. He imposed Greek customs, language, and ideals on the diverse cultures he conquered. His idea of unity was not a blend of cultures, but rather a dominance of Greek culture, erasing local traditions and beliefs. Alexander married foreign women, yes, and encouraged his men to do the same. But this wasn't about cultural respect, it was a tactic to secure his control over newly conquered territories by linking them back to Greece. Even his legendary drive was arguably fueled by something far darker than ambition alone. Many historians argue that Alexander was obsessed with surpassing his father, King II Philip, and outdoing the legendary Greek heroes like Achilles. He seemed haunted by an insatiable need to prove his greatness, no matter the human cost. It's hard to look at that and say this was a man with a clear vision for the good of his people. Instead, Alexander's drive appears as the pursuit of personal glory, no matter how many lives were trampled along the way. Some would argue that these flaws make him all the more impressive, showing that he was human. But that doesn't erase the atrocities he committed, or the cultures he tried to erase. History often looks at Alexander as a man of vision, but there's no denying he was also a man of ruthlessness, arrogance, and endless ambition. He brought the known world under one banner. Yes, but he left much of it in ruin, in bloodshed, and in fear. So, next time you think of Alexander the Great, remember the full story. Remember the cost of his greatness. Because, like so many legends, Alexander's legacy isn't just about the glory of conquest, it's also about the dark shadows he left behind. Thank you for watching, and if you want to keep exploring the untold stories of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. The past has much to teach us, but only if we're willing to see the whole picture.